you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Murder of Fire, the Stamina Dragonknight build for the Scalebreaker DLC. Now, if you've been on my channel before, you will know, of course, there is a toxicity build. That one is actually the advanced version of the Dragonknight. This one is much simpler, much easier to acquire the gear, with a simpler rotation as well, but much higher sustained survivability, and of course, it's viable throughout the entire game. So single player, 4-player, or even trials as well, and the output damage-wise is actually very nice, despite its ease of use. Now, first of all, we're going to start in the stats. We'll go into this first of all, make sure our food is on, make sure our buffs are on, and all that good stuff. We're on 20.9k max health, which was massive. We're on 34.1k max stamina, 842 recovery, and 15 and 11k resistances. We're on 4.2k weapon damage with 49.1% crit chance. That will actually go up, but don't worry, there are options. Now, I said our recovery is very high. Of course, we've put 64 points into stamina to give us as much as we can get, based on the fact that we've got 20k health, which is ridiculous, because we're using flat max health, max stam food. However, if you wish to alter that because you cannot manage your heavy attacks, or you just feel like you want that extra bit of sustain, you can, of course, change your food. Our Tayum Takeaway Broth is probably your most optimal choice if you are not going to change any of your stats. And for putting this on, you will gain, obviously, recovery, but you will lose max health and stamina. So your flat damage output will go down as far as your skills are concerned, but of course your recovery is higher, so you can spam them more often. So it's kind of a trade-off. You will lose a couple k health to put you down to 18k, and you will lose a bit of stamina putting you to almost 32k, but as you can see, our recovery has just gone up. We pop a potion just to make sure we've got them all showing. Almost 1400 recovery. Now, if you don't have enough for those, you can, of course, use Dubious Command Throne, which is slightly less in the flat stats. You lose the health recovery and a little bit of stam recovery, but it's still very nice. As you can see, we're still hovering around the 1.4 almost, but again, our health has gone down. Now, finally, this is your last choice. You can, of course, use Lava Foot. Now, this is mostly used for sustain on target dummies to simulate actual trial environments if you have lots of master staves and spiders running and all that good stuff to give you loads and loads of stam recovery, but you can use it on the build. Now, this will of course put us down to 14k health, so you will need to alter your stats here, and in doing so you will of course lose flat stamina, so you'll be around the 32k mark if you push yourself to 16. That does make you a lot squishier. It does bring your flat damage down, but it does heighten your recovery so that you can of course throw out more shapes. But just remember, this is a balance game. If you drop stamina, you will drop damage, but if you gain your health, of course, you will have heightened survivability. It's up to you. You can go lesser flat and more recovery, or you can go less recovery and more flat. Just bear in mind, of course, if you do go full flat food, and you have the recovery simulated by the other food, of course, it's win-win. You have high stamina, you have high health, and you have high recovery, but it depends on the situation you're in. Now, don't forget, of course, we are Stage 4 Vampire, and we are, of course, using the Shadow Mundus Stone. We're going to go into the skills now. I am going to explain these in detail, especially for those of you that have no idea how to work DK, especially this particular build anyway. If you already know everything, or if you think you already do, you are, of course, welcome to skip this. But if you do, you're at risk of missing out on information. If you ask questions in the comment section below that have already been answered in the video, I won't waste my time or yours answering them. So it's at your own risk if you skip. Anyway, first of all, we are using Venomous Claw. This is in our Ardent Flame skill line. It's the second ability you unlock. Starts off as Searing Strike, morph it to Venomous Claw. This is very simple. It's a 12-second single target damage over time. It ticks damage every 2 seconds, and every 2 seconds that this is active, it will increase in damage per tick by 12%, progressively. Stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So you don't spam this. It does do an initial hit, but you want to keep this on for the damage over time. You want it to last as long as you possibly can, and then reapply it just before it runs out or just after. This is really simple to apply. You're looking for that claw. Now it's on the target. It's taking damage over time. When it runs out, put it back on again. If you spam it, by the way, you're obviously resetting the skill, and you won't benefit from its extra damage output for its longer duration. Now, next up, of course, is Barbed Trap. This is very simple. This was buffed in this patch, actually, in Scalebreaker. Now, this was originally called Beast Traps in the Fighters Guild skill line. 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Trap Beast. It was called Rearming Trap, sorry. It's now been named Barbed Trap. If I say Trap Beast or Beast Trap, I mean the same thing. But anyway, this does a single target damage over time as well, but under the target that this is placed under. So if you put it under his feet, like so, it will pop and immobilize the target. If it can't immobilize them, if they're CC immune, don't worry. It will still do the damage. So it'll do single target physical damage over time for 18 seconds. And during this time, while it is doing damage, you will receive minor force, increasing all of your critical damage done by 10%. So you've got to keep this up as much as possible. Next up is Nox's Breath. This is in our Ardent Flame skill line as well as our Venom Claw. It's the third ability to unlock. Starts off as Fiery Breath. As you can imagine, it's breathing fire. But if you morph it for the Stamina morph, you get Nox's Breath, which is actually breathing poison. Really, really simple. Anyone caught inside of that, inside the conal effect, will take damage initially, and it will take damage over time for 12 seconds. Poison damage at that. This is poison, this is poison, this is physical. Keep that up 100% of the time, if you can. Also, any enemy caught in this will be affected by Major Fracture, reducing their physical resistances by 5280. That is the same as a Sword and Board Taunt, but this is Area of Effect, and this can actually affect 6 targets. The actual initial hit from the breath will hit infinite amount, but the damage over time and the fracture will hit 6. Next up is Rapid Strikes. It is a first ability you unlock in the dual wield skill line. Very, very easy to unlock. You will need to take Flurry and morph it to Rapid Strikes for the higher damage version of the two morphs. But if you feel like your survivability is down, you can change this to Bloodthirsty instead. Bloodthirsty doesn't increase its damage by 3% per hit, but it does give you a 60% of the final hit back in the form of a heal every time you finish this attack. It has a channel time, it does several stabs, and then a final double stab. Either morph is absolutely fine. The damage is higher on Rapid Strikes, but between the two, based on the fact one of them does help you survive, there's very, very little difference. I know it says it gives an extra 3% per hit, which it does, but if you say, for argument's sake, don't crit this version, but you do crit the other version, they'll meet in the middle. So it's a flip of a coin per stab as to which one is actually going to outperform. This should flat out, but it doesn't always. So if you want the survivability, go with the other one. If you want a chance for more damage, go with this one. Now, the next ability, of course, is Rending Slashes. This is also in a dual wield skill line. Second ability you unlock. Starts off as Twin Slashes, morphs to Rending Slashes. This is a single target damage over time, much like Venom Claw, except with a shorter duration. It's a bleed. Now, bleeds were changed in Scalebreaker. They do consider resistances now, so it doesn't go straight through. But this needs to stay on the target at all times. It does an initial hit as well, just like Venom Claw does. But there are two options for morphs. You can use Rending Slashes, which has a higher initial hit than the other morph. The other morph is Blood Craze. It has a slightly lesser hit, so instead of 2.9k initially, it will hit roughly around the 2.4, 2.5, so it's not massive, but the damage over time is the same. And for having that lesser initial hit, you will actually heal once every 2 seconds while this is active. So your two dual wield skills here, your Rapid Strikes and your Rending Slashes, are your higher damage versions. Your slightly lesser versions, which can still do roughly the same amount regardless, have heal morphs. So if you want the heals, take the other versions. If you don't, then take these. It's entirely up to you. Now, Front Bar Ultimate is, of course, only here for stats. It's from the Fighters Guild skill line, by the way. Starts off as Dawnbreaker, morph it to Flawless Dawnbreaker. You will need Fighters Guild level 10 to unlock this. It does do a decent amount of damage. When you activate it, also, it does give us 300 weapon damage for 20 seconds. So this is actually a really nice oh shit button. If the target is almost dead, or it's a big massive ads, and you don't have enough ultimate for anything spectacular, and you want to just finish them off, you can use this. But this is not our active ultimate. We want to use the back bar one as much as we possibly can, which we will get to shortly. Now, the back bar. Molten Whip is a choice. You do not have to have this on your bar, but you can if you wish to. It's in the Ardent Flame skill line. It's the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Lava Whip, morph it to Molten Whip. Now at level 4, while on your bar, any Ardent Flame abilities that you fire will increase your weapon and spell damage by 75. And that can stack up to 3 times. Every time you cast an Ardent Flame ability, the timer will reset. So 5 seconds and it will fall off. Or if you cast an ability within that timer, it will reapply another stack. So a maximum of 3, however. Now, if you use the whip, which we won't, you'll consume it and it'll start again. That's more for Magicka DPS. What we want it for is just the increased weapon damage. So basically, if we use an Ardent Flame ability, you'll see that there are some eyes in my buff timers. And every time I use one of these abilities, that is not the whip, it will stack up another one. Up to 3. Now every time I fire it, it won't give me any more stacks, but it will keep that weapon damage bonus and keep the timer going. Now we're not going to get full use out of that. We're actually at most only going to get 2 ticks of this, so we'll have 150 extra weapon damage. It only lasts 5 seconds, but once it's active, of course, when we swap to the front bar, it stays with us until it falls off. So this is a nice little boost to our weapon damage while we're finishing our back bar rotation to give us a little bit of burst on the front. However, if you do not want to slot this because you feel like you are a little bit too squishy, maybe you haven't got the healing morphs of these, so you don't have the heal over time and the heals from your stabs, or maybe you do and you just feel like you're that much more vulnerable than you should be. You can drop this. You don't have to go as high a damage as you want. It's a small bonus. It's not a massive difference. If you want, you can change this for Circle of Protection, which will morph, of course, into Ring of Preservation. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. It's the second ability to unlock. And this basically can go here. For passives, which will increase your weapon damage when we get to the Fighters Guild passives, but this will protect your group, and as you can see, heal you every second, and your friends, and give you increased recovery. So you can slot it for passives, or you can have it as an emergency kind of filler for heals while you're stabbing away at the target. Be careful though, because it is bloody expensive. If you want no weapon damage passives and you just want a heal just for those emergency situations, you can of course change this in the Assault skill line. You'll need PvP for this a little bit, for Echoing Vigor. Starts off as Vigor, morph it to Echoing Vigor, very simple. Heals you and your group once every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. Those are your choices. You can have a flat heal to keep things simple if you really want. You can use Ring of Preservation, protecting you and your group and giving you a heal and giving you a Fighters Guild passive, which we're coming to. Or if you just want to go flat damage, put the whip on there. Make sure you use an Ardent Flame ability on the back bar, which we will. I'm now going to explain those in a minute. Your choice, however. That can go one of 3 ways. Depends on the content you're in. Next is Poison Injection. This is in a bow skill line. It's a 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. Now this has a single target poison damage over time, from range of course, or close up, doesn't matter as long as you're within 28 meters. This lasts for 10 seconds, initial hit, then the dot, and you must keep this on the target at all times. Not only is it important to the weapon we're using, which we'll come to, but this does get stronger the lower the target's health. So it does nice damage throughout the entire fight, but the lower the health gets under 50%, the more damage it will deal. Very, very strong indeed. Keep that up. Next up is Consuming Trap. No one has any excuse to not have this skill. Soul Trap starts off as your first ability you get in the game, and you don't need a skill point for it. You will, however, need one to morph it. Now this is Consuming Trap, which is the single target damage over time version of it. There is another morph of this called Soul Splitting Trap, which is Area of Effect and has less single target damage. The choice is yours which one you pick, but I personally preference this one for this particular build because it's more single target based. This is based off of your highest offensive stat. So if you have high magic, it will do magic damage. If you have high stamina, it will do physical damage. Lasts 10 seconds. It costs magicka, so it's really, really good for our sustain. We don't have to use stamina to cast it. And if an enemy affected by this dies, you will restore 20% of all resources. So we'll actually get back 2k magicka, 4k health, and 6.8k stamina back. That is absolutely insane. And of course, if we have a Warhorn running and our stats are increased, this will be stronger because it is based off of 20% of our actual amount. So you can heal and restore your resources a lot with this. Make sure this is on any target that's about to die. You can basically spam your abilities with no struggle with sustain whatsoever if you can keep an eye on what's dying when. Very, very nice indeed. Flames of Oblivion. This is another one based off of your offensive stats. It's in the Ardent Flame skill line. It's a 5th ability to unlock. Takes some time to get. Starts off as Inferno. Morph it to Flames of Oblivion. Now this will do single target damage to 2 targets at most every 5 seconds while it's running. But it will only hit targets that you're in combat with. Also, for being slotted, it will give you Major Savagery and Prophecy for being on your bar, increasing your spell crit rating and your weapon crit rating by 2191. That's actually 10%, by the way. And again, like I said, this scales off of your offensive stats. Although it does fire damage, it will be stronger depending on which one of the 2 stats is higher. So if you have high magic, it will obviously contribute towards that. And if you have high stamina, it will contribute towards that. If you're in the middle, obviously, this will be a lot less, and it won't go either way of the 2. Very, very simple. Activate it. You have a fireball around your body. He looks really cool with glowy eyes, but that is the seething fury from this. But you can see it's not hitting anybody. But if I am in combat, it will hit the target that is in combat with me once every 5 seconds until it runs out. Now, if you reapply it, obviously you can prompt the fireball and restart the timer, or if you just leave it running, it will do its job as and when it's supposed to. Next up is, of course, Arrow Barrage. This is in our bow skill line. This is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Volley, morph it to Arrow Barrage. Now, this got altered. This has got a much wider area of effect than Endless Hail, and a much lesser timer, but more damage. So this is the one we're using because our rotation is relatively short. The other morph of it does last 12 seconds. It's got a smaller area of effect and does smaller damage, but of course it fits inside longer rotations better. So this is the one we've picked on purpose for the point of the damage output, but if you prefer the other one just because of its uptime, that's entirely up to you. This did perform slightly higher though on the actual setup, but this is very simple. Damage over time in massive area of effect. Everything inside of here takes damage once a second. Very, very nice indeed. Keep that up at all times. Don't let it run out for too long because you'll lose a lot of damage. Now, our ultimate that is on our back bar is our main ultimate that we must use. It's in our Ardent Flame skill line. It takes you to level 12, I think, to unlock this. Then you want to morph your Dragonknight standard to Standard of Might. This lasts 20 seconds. It is 250 points in cost. It's very expensive, but it is stupidly strong. Anything caught inside of this will take damage every 1 second. It will have its health recovery and healing received reduced. You will have increased damage of 15% and reduction to incoming damage to you by 15% for standing inside of it. Plus there's a synergy attached to this as well, which other people can take, which does a nice flame AoE and pins targets to the banner. Now the trick to this, of course, is this does increase all of your damage, but you don't want to just drop the banner on the ground and leave it there. I'm going to build up some ultimate while we're here. What you need to do is make sure that you put the banner down while your rotation is already in full swing. So if you drop it straight away, the timer starts going. You've got 20 seconds worth of extra damage. The time is ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking. There's no damage on the target anyway, so what's the point? It's just the banner doing its work. But if everything is already running, you've got your dots on, you've got all this stuff running, all the shapes are flying around the room, then everything that's already running just got boosted, and then you can carry on with your rotation. You're not wasting any unnecessary time, but stay in the banner if you want the bonus damage. The enemy doesn't have to be inside the banner for you to get the extra damage bonus. You do. But if the enemy is inside of it, of course they take flame damage over time as well. So just bear that in mind. If you are in a ranged situation for whatever reason, you can't get in, you're not going to get in for about another 20 seconds, but your ultimate is ready. You can drop it on the ground and shoot stuff from range. As long as you're in here, you hit harder. Very, very nice indeed. But again, a key point to that is make sure that you're in full swing of your rotation first before you drop it. Don't just drop a blank and then run off. Now, we're going to get into passives. These, again, are going to be in detail, but I will explain how these all work, and then you'll start to understand how this build is actually designed and why it works the way it does. Combustion is very important. Increase the damage of your burn and poison status effects. Now, if you're not familiar with those, flame damage has a chance to apply burn and status effect, which is a single target damage over time on the target. It's short duration, but it does flame damage. And poison status effects, if you do poison damage, same applies. You have a single target damage over time poison effect, which is also quite short, but very, very strong. Anyone can apply those. But as a Dragonknight, our versions of those are stronger by 50%. And we've got an extra bonus as well. If you apply a burn status effect, you restore 500 magicka. If you apply a poison status effect, you restore 500 stamina. And each effect can occur once every 2 seconds. Now before, one of the two, one or the other, used to be able to apply once every 5 seconds. Now we can apply them both, each one on a 2-second cooldown. Our sustain is awesome. When you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, you reduce the enemy's movement speed. We do have a few direct damage abilities, so of course this is direct damage, this is as well, and this is as well initially when they first hit. So those abilities from the Ardent Flame skill line will slow down the enemy, although that's not hugely essential in PvE. Increases the damage of your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 10% and the duration by 2 seconds. So this banner, the Breath, and Venom Claw all got buffed with this particular passive in this update. It's very, very nice indeed. And this increases the damage of your flame area of effect abilities. Now, technically, we don't have any, do we? Because we're doing poison and physical. Although, this banner is flame area of effect. So the banner is boosted by that passive. Also note, this also decreases the cost of your stamina poison abilities by 25%. Now, the breath is stamina and poison damage. The Venom Claw is stamina and poison damage. So stamina cost, poison damage. But so is poison injection. Even though this is a bow skill, not a DK skill, it is poison and it does cost stamina, so this also is affected. So these abilities are very, very cheap for us. Now, this increases the amount of damage you can block by 10%. That's very handy. This one increases your healing received if you have a Draconic Power ability active. So if you're using a resistance buff, for example, in place maybe of Flames of Oblivion, while it's active, you will have increased healing received. If you don't, then you won't get the bonus. So if you're not ever going to use it, don't get this passive. But if you are occasionally using it, then you may need this at some point in time. This increases the health recovery for having an ability slotted from this skill line, which we don't. But regardless of whether you have one slotted or not, you do increase your instant cast melee attacks by 2 meters, which is obviously your Venom Claw and your Rend and Slashes. Those are affected, as are your light and heavy attacks. So make sure you get this passive here. And this increases your spell resistance. As a Dragonknight, we have higher spell resistance. Get this passive. Now, Earth and Heart is very important for several reasons. This increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities. If you're in an oh shit situation and your banner's not quite cutting it, your healer sucks, or you're just solo, corrosive armor instead of your banner. This will actually do poison damage in area of effect. Not a lot, but a little bit. And all damage you take will be no more than 3% of your max health. So you're basically immortal for a short period of time as long as you're getting a couple of heals, depending on how many hits you're receiving. Unless it's a one-shot mechanic. Very, very strong defensive ultimate. And you ignore all physical resistances of targets you hit with direct damage ability. So your dots aren't affected, but your direct hits are. So that's an oh shit button. This obviously increases its duration. It's now 12 seconds. It used to be 10 actually, but it's now 12 seconds. Battle Roar is very important. When you cast an ultimate ability, you will restore 46 health, magic, and stamina for every single point cost. That is why this is our oh shit button. This is very, very cheap, and if we are in trouble, we can pop it. But this is our main ultimate. This is our sustain ultimate as well. Not only does it do damage and protect us, but this also gives us a crap ton of resources back. 250 points of ultimate times 46 for all 3 resources. We actually get a 20k heal out of this just for popping the banner. It's really, really nuts. So you've got to make sure that to benefit from this passive, you use your resources, then use an ultimate to get them back. Don't just pop a blank banner with full resources. It's a waste. This, when you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you and your group gain minor brutality for 20 seconds, increasing their weapon damage by 10%. And if you use an Earth and Heart ability, you will gain 3 ultimate, and this can happen once every 6 seconds. So for argument's sake, if we are trying to buff our group, we're bringing a little bit for everybody else, you could drop Flames of Oblivion for Molten Armaments and give your group Major Sorcery, just based on the skill bonus itself. Or the other morph, which is Igneous Weapons, you could give them Major Brutality instead if you wanted. But for activating it, you will also give them minor brutality as well. So if you are using any of these skills for any reason, use them once every 20 seconds and you'll get this bonus. It's really, really helpful. And of course, for using any of those abilities, you will get 990 stamina back. So if you are slotting this, every time you fire it with no cooldown, it will give you back stamina. So in some situations where your stamina resources suck, maybe you aren't getting enough synergies, maybe your recovery's really bad, maybe you're blocking all the time, you may want to slot this instead of Flames of Oblivion just to keep topping it up every so often. Really, really handy passives. Make sure you understand them even if you're not fully utilizing them. Now, dual wield, you're going to want every single one of these. This will increase the damage of dual wield abilities, including your light and heavy attacks, against targets under 25% health. This will increase your weapon damage of your offhand weapon, because offhand weapons are weaker than your main hand. This will reduce the stamina cost of dual wield abilities by 15%. We do want to get the cost down so we can use them more often. This will give you a 15% damage bonus against stunned, immobilized, disoriented, or silenced enemies. Now, this does apply to your dual wield attacks, not everything else. So be very clear about that. And this also gives us a bonus depending on what weapons we are holding. Now, it looks like I'm holding 2 maces, but I'm actually not. That's an outfit. I'm using 1 axe and 1 dagger, so we get a crit bonus, and we get a really nice damage over time effect as well for 6 seconds with an 8% chance to do so. So these two combined, really, really solid. On the bow, we do need all these as well. This will give you an increased damage bonus of up to 12% for enemies at long range. So on the run up to a fight, maybe you're throwing in light attacks, maybe you're putting down your bow skills or whatever on the way in, or maybe on the way out if you're inside mechanics. During those moments, you will obviously increase your damage output for those skills. This increases the weapon crit of your bow while you're on that bar. So, of course, the same bonus to the dagger. We've got the same crit on both bars. This will reduce the stamina cost of bow abilities by 15%. They are expensive. And our poison injection is a poison ability, which is reduced by 25% because of the Dragonknight passives. But this also stacks with it. They are multiplicative, so there is diminished returns, but they do stack regardless. This will increase our damage of our bow abilities by 5% for every light attack or heavy attack with our bow that we do. Now, this does have a 5-second duration. Every next light or heavy will start the timer again. This can stack up to 5 times, and as long as you consistently light or heavy, this will stay with us forever. But we are not a bow build. We are a dual wield and bow build. So we're going to do some damage on the back, we do some damage on the front. We're going to swap, swap, swap. So we're not going to benefit from this 100% of the time or for its full damage output. But we are going to benefit from about 3 to 4 light attacks occasionally on the back bar, so that when we do swap to the front, the time is still ticking. It will fall off, but during that time, we will benefit from the extra damage. So this is a very, very important passive, but we're not going to get its full potential. We'll just get some of it, which is better than nothing. And of course, hasty retreat. If you dodge roll, you run faster. That's a jump. It's dodge roll. Now, that's only for 4 seconds. But it's very, very helpful, of course, inside or outside of mechanics. Just be aware, if you dodge roll one dodge roll after another, too close to each other within 4 seconds or so, you will get increased cost of it, so don't overdo it. We are using 1 piece of light armor, so we will take these 3 passives. This will reduce the effectiveness of snares and reduce the cost of sprinting. This will increase your mag recovery. We are using mag ability, so we want the recovery, and reduce the cost of a mag ability. We are using them. Cost down is good. This also increases our resistance. So we'll take these 3 minor passives. We don't need these 2 because you need 5 pieces of light armor to benefit from them. We are using 5 pieces of medium, so we'll take all of these. This will increase your crit rating per piece worn. This will increase your stam recovery and your reduction to cost. This will reduce the cost of sneaking and, of course, your detection size. It's mostly for PvP, but there are some PvE elements where this can actually be useful. This increases your weapon damage by 15%, and this will increase your movement speed while sprinting and reduce the cost of dodge rolling. It's very, very important. With medium armor, our strength or our resistance is not the fact that we could just block and stand there and survive. We do need to evade, and that is the strength of medium armor, so we do have a reduction to cost for that, so it's really, really handy. Depending on the mechanics you're in, of course. Now, heavy armor, you only need 3 of these. I've got all 5 because I use this for other things as well, but you only need the first 3. This will increase your physical and spell resistance for the 1 piece of heavy that we've got worn. This will increase your health recovery, which isn't that important, but it does give us... But this does give us 108 magic and stam back when we take damage once every 4 seconds for each piece worn, which is actually a lot more helpful than it looks. This is a consistent resource gain. Regardless of how small it is, it does help. Then, of course, Juggernaut. We are wearing 1 piece. We'll take the 2% health bonus for doing so. Next up is, of course, Vampire. We are a stage 4 Vampire. You don't have to be stage 4 if you don't want to. This is your choice, so don't ask me in the comment section, why are you a stage 4 Vampire? Because I choose to be, that's why. I don't want to sit there messing around, feeding or eating expensive food to mess with my Vampire level. I am more than comfortable in content as a stage 4. All content that I've completed, I've done as stage 4. However, if you are uncomfortable, you can bring it down to stage 3 or stage 2 if you choose to. But these passives do rely on you having certain stages. Stage 2 will give you an increased recovery to magicka and stamina, which is obviously very useful for our entire rotation because we use stamina and magic. And undeaf, you need stage 3 or higher. The reason people are scared of certain stages of Vampire is because the higher the stage, the more damage you take from fire, because stupid people stand in fire too long. But this, regardless of what you're standing in, as long as you take damage under 50% health, your mitigation goes up. So you can take up to 33% less damage the lower your health bar is. So your survivability is up as a vampire for all other types of damage. It's really, really nice. Choice is yours though. You don't have to be a vampire. You don't have to be stage 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can be whatever you want. But that is what I use it as. That's how I play it. It's really, really strong. Next up, of course, is Fighter's Guild. Now, these passives are important. We mentioned them at the beginning that they're going to be coming up. Why are they important? Intimidating Presence, of course, reduce the cost of the abilities if they are stamina, which they are. Barb Trap, and, of course, Ring of Preservation if you use it. Reduction to cost, very nice. Increases your weapon damage by 3% for each ability slotted. Now, that's why this is important. This gives us a 3% bonus, and this passive bonus here is another 3%. So we've got 6% weapon damage on the front bar. Now, this can give us between 75 and 150 weapon damage for a few seconds. This is one ability. This is actually 2. So sometimes you can get 2 ticks from this, and they carry over to the front. So that's quite handy. But if you do have Ring of Preservation, you will have a 3% flat weapon damage bonus all the time on the back, but just bear in mind they don't carry over. So you can have a protective Healy buff on the back bar and a flat weapon bonus, but it's not like the whip where it carries over to the front. So that's why that was a choice earlier, because if you do have it here, you do benefit from this. Banish the Wicked is very important. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill an undead, Daedra, or werewolf. Our sustain is built into our ultimates because if we use them, we get stuff back. The more you kill, the more ultimate you get. The more you can use your ultimate, the higher our sustain. Also, your Fighter's Guild abilities deal 20% more damage to undead, Daedra, or werewolves. If you are hitting them with this or this, they will be stronger. Now, Undaunted, of course, you do want these. This will give you 4% health, stamina, and magic back if you take a synergy. Every single synergy in the game is beneficial. They will heal you, they will shield you, they will protect your group or yourself. They will give you a damage output bonus. They will give you many, many different things, but every single one of them is beneficial. Take the synergies. They are there for you and your group. They are not just there for the tank. Sick of hearing selfish tanks crying about every synergy has to be theirs, and they don't take the bastards. Everyone can take every synergy in the game. If they really need sustain that hard, they've got 2 choices. They can heavy attack, or they can man up and ask for another spear, please. Doesn't hurt. Take the synergies, you will need them. This is very important, by the way. This is Undaunted Metal, and for each type of armor worn, we gain 2% magic, health, and stamina. As you saw earlier with our passives, we're wearing 3 different types. We're wearing heavy, medium, and light. So we get a massive bonus to our flat stats, which is why our health and our stamina are so high. Don't need these. We are, of course, an orc. We have massive bonuses here. 2k max stamina, 1k max health, which is great for our survival. And if we do damage with weapon abilities, we actually heal for 600 once every 4 seconds. By the way, weapon abilities are light attacks, heavy attacks, or skills. So if you have arrow barrage running, for example, and you're not doing anything else, you can actually heal off of that. Very, very nice indeed. And of course, we have a flat increase to weapon damage by 258, and we reduce the cost of sprinting and increase our movement speed while sprinting. We have very, very low cost for sprint, and we are wicked fast. You can choose other races if you prefer, but just bear in mind, of course, there are differences. Some have higher recovery, some have higher flat weapon damage, some have neither of the two and have sustain back in terms of health, stamina, and magicka. You've got lots of different choices out there. But just bear in mind, of course, we do have a health bonus on this race as well, and a heal. If you pick something that doesn't have this bonus, you may have to alter your stats a little bit, depending on what food you're using. Same goes for this flat stamina as well. There are no rules as to what race you can pick, but this one was more optimal for the overall setup. However, the choice is yours. Finally, the most important passive in the game, in my opinion, is medicinal use. For having this bonus here, all of your potions last 30% longer. We're using weapon power pots, which give us major savagery, major brutality, and major endurance, increasing our weapon damage and stam recovery by 20%, increasing our crit chance by 10%, and we, of course, get stamina back for the privilege as well. Now, they would normally last 36 seconds, but with this bonus, they last 47, and the cooldown is 45, so we can have the potions up 100% of the time. Very important indeed. Now, I'm going to get into the gear. This is going to be really, really fun. So, if you've viewed this before, you probably know what's coming. And hopefully you're not too disappointed, because that means you don't have to waste any time or money on upgrading stuff. But we are using 1 axe and 1 dagger of Unfathomable Darkness on the front bar, Nirnhoned and Sharpened. Must be on the front bar. You don't want to double bar this. And I'm going to explain why. First of all, 2 weapons and then jewelry, or 2 weapons and then 3 body pieces. It's entirely up to you which order, but the 2 weapons must be here. Now, you have a crit bonus, a penetration bonus, a flat weapon damage bonus, and when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to call a murder of crows around you for 12 seconds, and every 3 seconds, a crow will fire off at the closest target within 12 meters of you, dealing X amount of physical damage. Now, this lasts 12 seconds and can happen every 15, so there's a 3-second gap, which is the same as every single budgie that fires. Yes, I call them budgies. So you can effectively have 100% uptime on the overall effect itself. However, the reason we have it on the front bar only is because of its duration. Once it's fired, we can swap bars. So if the birds are here flying around us, we can swap bars and still keep it while it's running. Then we can swap to the front, it's probably still running, and we can reapply it again before we swap again. If you have it on you all the time, you can obviously still have roughly the same uptime, but you miss out on the opportunity to have a back bar weapon. And that is why we have this, a Master's Bow. This is infused on purpose because you want to get the most out of that weapon and spell damage glyph. Basically, infused will increase the strength of it and reduce the cooldown. So as long as you've got a weapon ability that is area of effect on the ground or on the target, then this will consistently proc this glyph. So this has a very high uptime with that trait. But essentially, this particular weapon, if you fire poison injection at a target, that target will have effectively increased damage done by you in the form of 301 extra weapon damage. This doesn't show in your stats. It affects the target directly. So for each target with this poison arrow on it, they will be hit harder by you. Now, if you don't have the Master's Bow, do not panic. You can use the Maelstrom Bow if you have it. It will do less overall output in terms of single target damage, but it will add to AoE if you choose. But if you don't have either of the two, you can of course put an agility weapon on the back bar. You'll get 1.4k increased stamina while you're there. It won't be a massive increase, it won't be a massive drop, it'll just be something nice to use for the time being. It will work out just fine, so don't panic. Above all, do not double bar this. Next up, of course, our monster set, Vulcan Scoria. This is, for most people, oh my god, it's a Magicka set. Not necessarily. There's no magic on the set, is there? No, it just does fire damage. Well, DKs do fire damage anyway. They have a bonus to the fire status effect. And of course, why the hell not? It's fun as hell. Any damage over time you do has an 8% chance to make a meteor fly out of the sky and hit the target and then do burst AoE on the ground. And this can happen once every 5 seconds. It is insane. I'm going to demonstrate all the sets in a moment, but this is really, really nice. Yes, there's other stuff you can use. You could use Veladreth if you preferred, which gives you a weapon damage bonus and does disease damage in single target, but the cooldown on this is really, really high in comparison. This is a 9-second duration between each hit. This is only 5. So this can fire a lot more often, even though it does less initial damage. And out of all the tests I've done so far, apart from this having more survivability because you've got a 1-piece health bonus, the damage output is actually really, really close. The weapon damage on all of your skills and the proc itself actually balance out to almost the same as the constant firing meteor out of the sky from this, regardless of it being flame damage. And if you've got high spell pen in your group, this will actually benefit quite a bit anyway. So the choices between these two is entirely up to you. If you want to go extra squishy and get sometimes a very, very small amount of increased damage, fair enough, you can go Veladreth. But if you want to keep up the theme of the build, keep up your survivability, and have very, very nice damage over time, and initial burst from this I would preference overall. It's really, really fun, and you're not going to see much difference at all. You can, of course, still use Zan, although this has got spell crit on it for the 1-piece bonus. You can ignore that and get some very nice flame damage out of this for doing light and heavy attacks. It sometimes outperformed Vele, sometimes it didn't. But again, Vulcan Scoria all the way. It's brilliant. So, heavy on the head, light on the shoulders, or reverse order. You can have either or. Divines on both. If, by the way, you are using the recovery food that doesn't have any health on it, you're going to want to make this infused and put a health glyph on it. That will cover the gap. It's really, really nice. Now, finally, the other set we're using is the Red Mountain. This has weapon damage, flat stamina, and weapon crit. And when you deal damage with a weapon ability, you have a 10% chance to spawn a volcano that erupts after 1 second, doing flame damage at the target, and this can happen once every 2 seconds. So this is rapid, very, very fast firing set. But unlike Unfathomable Darkness, with a big, big duration and cooldown, so we can swap bars safely and keep it, this one is very short. So you want this on your body or on your body and jewelry at all times. You do not want to single bar this. You want to make sure this is with you all the time. Now, we're going to demonstrate what these sets actually do. So Divine's on everything, by the way. You can go 1 infused if you prefer, just to make sure that you've got the nice initial flat if you need the extra health. But Divine's on everything. You want infused and bloodthirsty on the jewelry. 1 infused, 2 bloodthirsty. Now I'm going to demonstrate what these do. So all you need to do, basically, is for Vulcan Scoria, you need damage over time. For Unfathomable Darkness, you need any damage. And for Red Mountain, you need weapon damage. So we'll look at the skills quickly. Every single one of these, including the ultimates, counts as damage over time, except for Flames of Oblivion. But that does count as normal damage, just counts. So you could have any of these proccing the Unfathomable Darkness. You can have all of them, except for this, proccing Vulcan Scoria. You can have any of them that are weapon skills. This one, this one, this one, and this one to proc Red Mountain, or your light attacks. And of course, don't forget, we do have poisons on our weapons. 2 damage over time poison effects, which can both also fire off Vulcan Scoria and can also fire off Unfathomable Darkness. So let's keep it really simple. Let's do no rotations at all and just activate some skills and leave them running. And put the control down. Volcanoes firing out of the floor, budgies firing everywhere, meteors coming out of the sky. Didn't have to do a damn thing. We do have a rotation. We are going to hit like a steam train, but all those effects are going to be happening all the time. All you have to do is activate a skill and you start making all these fireworks happen. It's really, really, really fun. Now, hopefully that isn't too confusing, because now we're going to get to the other choices. So, Reliquin. If you do trials, which you should do, this can do trials no problem whatsoever. In fact, has done many, many times. If you do trials, you got 2 options. You've got the regular version or the perfected version, whichever you've got access to, whether it be normal, vet, or vet hard mode. Reliquin will give you a crit bonus. It will give you a 5% increase to all of your damage. It'll give you another crit bonus. If you have the perfected version, it'll give you an increased 1k max stamina. If not, you won't. And finally, if you do a light attack or heavy attack, you'll have a wind that affects the target, and it will happen and spin, doing damage every 1 second for 5 seconds. Every 1 second that you do a light attack or a heavy attack will give you another stack, and it will stack up to 20 times. This does take some practice, by the way. It's very hard. Most people can't keep these procs up inside actual content. They show you nice dummy numbers, but they can't actually use it in content. If you're one of those people, you've got 2 choices. Practice, or take it off and use something else. But if you can use it, you are going to benefit quite a lot in overall DPS from this on single target. Also note that these wins actually count as damage over time. So they can proc Vulcan Scoria. And they can also make the budgies fire, because that's damage. There it goes. If we just keep this up, we'll see a volcano, not a volcano, we'll see a meteor come out of the sky. There it goes. And because we're using light attacks to fire it, we can make Red Mountain fire as well. So every set that we've got can actually happen from activating that. Very, very nice indeed. But you must keep up the stacks, because if you don't, as you can see, the wind runs out and all of your stacks of damage have now gone. Takes a lot to practice with that set, but that is a choice if you want to optimize that bit further. Failing that, if you do have access to Alkosh as well, as long as you're taking synergies, then that can also benefit you, because that does damage over time in front of you for each synergy you take. Debuffs the target as well for 3010 for both physical and spell penetration. And every single synergy you take refreshes the debuff, but reapplies an extra damage over time. So if you take 10 synergies, you get 10 damage over time procs. Really, really, really strong if you can use it. That, however, is from more of Lorcage, and Reliquin is from Cloud Rest. Anyway, for the most part, stick to the basics. Very, very easy to get hold of this stuff. You can buy all of it on the market except for Vulcan Scoria and the Master's Bow. Everything else you can buy. Now, we're going to go into the champion points. Then I'm going to explain the rotation and show you a demonstration on the dummy. We'll start with the red trees, because I normally start there. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage we take. 64 and 64, so we've got 13 points, or 13% rather, for all other damage that we take, including whether it's direct damage or not. And again, same applies to this, as well as the reduction to damage we've got from all elements. We actually take 19% less damage from damage over time. Also bear in mind we have the Unchained passive, which means if we do break free, and occasionally we will, the next stamina ability we cast is 80% cheaper. So that's when you want to use something like a heal or maybe Circle of Protection, because if you do have those active on the bar at the time, it will be much, much cheaper to be able to utilize them. 90 points in a quick recovery to give us a 5% increase to healing received, so all heals that we do or receive will be enhanced. Also, we have this open with 10 points in this tree, giving us the Field Physician passive, which means if we resurrect someone, we actually take less damage while doing so. So before you pick someone up, pop a quick heal, then give them a res. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 in Tenacity, so if we do heavy attack, we get more back. And 14% from 75 points into Mooncar for increased stamina recovery as well. 72 points into Tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll by 23%, which is massive. And we've got 4 points left. You can fiddle these about and put them wherever you want, but honestly, there's nowhere really to put them. So we'll take some block cost reductions. 0.97 doesn't do anything, but the 1% does. And because we've got 75 points minimum in this tree, we do have access to the Treasure Hunter passive, which means we have higher quality loot from chests. Nothing in here at all. We don't use any of it. 48 into Master at Arms to increase our direct damage. That includes our Vulcan Scoria, our Red Mountain, and our Unfathomable Darkness, as well as our light and heavy attacks and Flames of Oblivion, and all initial hits from dots. This will increase our light and heavy attacks, which also, again, they stack together. 72 points into Thermitage. We're doing a lot of damage over time, especially if you're using Reliquin. 61 points into Precise Strikes to give us a 21% increase to critical damage. We have high crit damage because we're using the Shadow Mundstone already. This also stacks with it. 34 points into Piercing. Now, the reason we don't go up to 61 here is because most of the time when I'm using a sharpened weapon, to make sure that in optimized situations where all debuffs are applied, we actually hit 18,200 on the nose as far as pen caps are concerned. But we do have additional penetration in our sets. And Unfathomable Darkness actually has just over 1.4k. So we can drop 1.4k from the 61 and leave us with 34, meaning we've got more points to put elsewhere. 49 points into Mighty to increase all of our damage done by all of the damage that we're doing as far as physical, poison, disease is concerned by 11% as well. Really, really handy. And of course, don't forget, this Exploiter passive is here for 75 points or more. We've actually got 216 in here, so we're covered. But any target that is off balance, all the damage you do is increased by 10%. Now, the rotation is actually very, very simple. Just bear in mind, of course, the food you're using. If you're using flat food, you will want to heavy attack occasionally if your group is not throwing out loads of shapes and synergies and nice recovery. If you are using recovery food, you may not need to heavy attack at all. So, what you need to do is make sure that your Beast Trap is down, and you make sure your Flames of Oblivion is active. All the time. Make sure these two are on. Now, we'll imagine that the Beast Trap is under the target, and all you need to do from here, from your back bar, is Light Attack Arrow Barrage, Light Attack Poison Injection, Light Attack Flames of Oblivion, Light Attack Soul Trap, swap bars. So, from the back bar, Light Volley, we'll call it Volley because it's its base form. Light Volley, Light Poison, Light Flames, Light Soul Trap, swap bar. 4 skills, Light Attack between each one. Front bar, once you get there, we've got 3 dots and a spammable, and then a trap. So, dot 1, Venom Claw, Light Attack Venom. Light Attack Run and Slashes, Light Attack Breath, Light Stab, Rapid Strikes, Light Stab again, Light Beast Trap Swap. So we'll do the front again. Light Venom, Light Rendon, Light Breath, Light Stab, Light Beast Trap Swap bars. So we'll do that quickly again. Volley, Light, Poison Injection, Light, Flames of Oblivion, Light, Soul Trap, Swap. Light Venom, Light Rendon, Light Breath, Light Stab, Light Beast Trap, Swap. Simple as that. If you have to drop your banner, try and do it at the end of your back bar rotation so that when you drop it, you swap bars and start with your front bar again with your new rotation. And also, if you do find that you're struggling with sustain, all you need to do is replace 1 Rapid Strikes with a heavy attack. That's it. In testing, with a recovery food, obviously, simulating sustain, which is what I'm now going to show you in a second, we got a decent amount of damage out. With a flat food and no recovery bonuses whatsoever, throwing in the heavy attack every so often, in 1 or maybe every 2nd rotation, the damage output was almost the same, because we covered it with our nice heavy attack damage. But again, depending on what content you're in, depends on what you may or may not have to do. So I'm going to show you a quick dummy demonstration with Reliquin on, of course, showing you sort of the optimized situation, if you like. And you can take from it what you will. You can use the easy setup, you can use the harder setup, it's entirely up to you. But above all, this is very, very fun, very viable, sustainable, survivable, the lot. Enjoy. So, hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. It's very simple to use in comparison to most DKs out there, especially alongside my toxicity build, which is a lot squishier and a lot more difficult to use. And you can use it for everything. Really, really fun. Hopefully a lot of you out there get what you need out of this. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website, XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides are. including dungeon guides and now a trial guide as well, and more are coming very, very soon. Don't forget, of course, I do also stream on Twitch every single night from 10 PM UK time, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.